and I hope everybody is staying safe and staying healthy. We're really excited to have you here. And there's a lot going on, as you know, that's kind of turning all of our worlds upside down, a lot of uncertainty. And I just want to start off with a little bit of encouragement. I'm really excited that you all are here. I think as we look to the future, there will be lots of changes in the way that we do things, and the way that we interact with the people that we serve. And I'm just very excited to see all of you jump on and proactively face that future and try to adjust rather than waiting for things to get back to quote unquote normal. I think it's people like you that are moving things forward, and I'm excited to share our knowledge and to also learn from all of you. So thank you for being here. You're an encouragement to me, and I hope that you guys are encouraged today. That said, I'm going to introduce Chad Williams. He's our CEO. He has been managing our team remotely in a distributed environment since 2004, so 16 years. And while he's been doing that, he's also, he and his wife have been homeschooling 7 kids all the way through. Um, and so he has a wealth of experience and a wealth of knowledge on this subject. And I'd also just like to say one of the things that I'm most excited about is how thoughtful and intentional Chad is about doing things. The information that you're going to get comes from many years of well thought out practice rather than kind of winging it. So I'm really excited what he has to share, and I know that we'll all learn a lot. Over to you, Chad.
Josh, thank you so much. Let me see if we can get this video figured out here. All right, I think that part. And then I'm actually going to see. Okay. As Josh just mentioned, we've all been impacted in some way by the coronavirus. Last week, our executive team got together and just asked the question, well, what can we do to help? And this webinar was the outflow of that. For some of you, this might actually be your first time working remotely. And for others, you're used to getting things done working remotely. For some of you, you're used to getting things done by walking around, management by walking around. Well, how do you do that in a work environment when you just can't walk in the cubicle or walk next door? As Josh mentioned, we've been working remotely for 16 years now. And I'll be upfront, we don't claim to have all the answers. We really don't. But what we have learned, we want to be able to share with you today. So in 2004, when we started 5Q, this is my family. This is the family as they are today, not 16 years ago. When we started 5Q 16 years ago, my one son was 6 years old, and he was at the boundaries with his mom in every way possible. And a good kid, good heart, but just very a kinesthetic learner. So he was bouncing off the walls, loved to be hands-on, get things done. And it was about that time that we made the decision to leave an office environment and start a company. And so I started working from home then. And I tell you, just having a presence of my presence in the house, my wife would say it just calmed him down in ways that we didn't expect. What I want to share with you is the most important reason why we organized our company as a remote working environment was this picture that you're looking at right here. We started our company in Lincoln, Nebraska. We had 5 kids at that time. That allowed us, because we worked remotely, allowed us to move, and we moved closer to grandma and grandpa. And it just given the kids the ability to be out in the country, to experience things like a trampoline, zip line, tree, and all the things that you can do when you're on an acreage. And so this really is the reason why we started 5Q as a remote working environment 16 years ago. Just one quick word. Our organization has had the privilege of serving lots of nonprofit. We're a services and software and services company. We serve lots of nonprofits, a lot of them in the faith-based and the educational space, and whether it's websites, mobile apps, or we'll share a little bit of how some organizations during this time are using our personalization platform, Journity. We'll share a little about that a little bit later. And like I mentioned, we've been working remotely since 2004. This is the current makeup of our team. This includes our full-time staff, our interns, and a few contractors that we have. So you can see that we're spread across, I think we're spread across 4 time zones right now, including the one person that we have working in Argentina, and then everybody else is stateside across 4 time zones right now. So what are we going to cover today? First, I'm going to talk about a couple myths when it comes to working remotely. And then what is a mindset that a person has? Then we're going to look at what does it look like to work, just what are the patterns, habits that we've learned, some of the things that we've learned to work effectively. Then what does it look like to lead a team effectively in a remote environment? And then we have some resources and a free offer for you at the end as well. So first of all, what are some of the myths? I don't know if some of you saw this from Babylon Bee yesterday, where pant sales plummet as everyone's working from home. And actually, I think that's one of the myths of working from home, is that that if you're working from home, you're working in your pajamas, and that absolutely is not the case. In fact, I'll share one of the tips later on. One of the things I encourage right now, encourage you to do, if you have a dress code as a leader, as a manager, when you're in the office, I encourage you to keep the same, especially for these first couple of weeks, keep the same dress code. Keep as the rhythms and the patterns just as close as possible for folks, because that does set a tone of professionalism, and you feel it when you come to work and you're dressed for the occasion. And so the first myth is that you're wearing your pajamas if you're going to work from home. No, you don't have to do that. Secondly is the concept of a virtual company. This is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. I don't like the term of virtual company, because early on when I would say, yeah, I run a virtual company, people would say, oh, so your company really doesn't exist? So that's the terms like remote or distributed to describe how we work, because yes, we are a real company. We just work in some different areas, and we've learned how to be able to do that in the day and age in which we live. So those are just a couple myths about working remotely that just aren't the case. Next, I want to share with you a mindset. What is the right mindset that we should have if we're going to be tackling this remote environment? So I'm just going to share a little bit. When I first started working in a remote environment, candidly, we had some staff turnover, more staff turnover than I was thinking should have happened. I would have the ability to hire great talent, but then they'd be here for 2 or 3 years, and then they'd be on to the whatever's next. And as I stepped back and just thought about, well, what is it about my leadership, my management, my leadership style that may be contributing to this? And I realized when you're in an office environment, it's really easy to make those personal connections. It's really easy just to walk in the door, walk in the office, ask about how family's doing, ask about how things are doing on a personal level. But when you're in a remote environment, it doesn't come as naturally. And I realized that my team wasn't hearing from me, whether that be from Slack, other than our planned meetings. They weren't here. If it was an unplanned meeting, they were only hearing about me when I had some improvement or some negative things to say about improving performance or whatever that might be. And I realized that, man, I needed to change my style. about how I go about how I go about leading. And I'll share some of those tips later on. But that really came from a mindset, learning from changing my mindset to realize that relationships matter just as much, if not more, than getting stuff done. And also assume the best about people. If there's something that you're wondering, why did a person do that, or why are they saying that? I know in a text type communication, whether it's chatting back and forth or email, it's really easy to make assumptions. So always work to assume the best when you're working in those types of settings. Third is to be proactive. Don't wait, but if you see somebody who is deserving of praise, jump right on it. Be proactive. Go and interact with them, even if there isn't something business related that you or your organization related that you need to talk to. So be proactive. Also be proactive if you have questions, because the next one you can't communicate enough. Don't be afraid to over communicate. One thing that I say to our team is that clarity is kindness. At least in our culture, in our culture, the concept of clarity, being as clear as possible, over communicate, is really being kind to your team. And then a positive attitude, that's not just thinking positive about the day, but it really is about an attitude about, hey, if we figured this out, if we did, this is what we did in person, when we were in an office environment. Well, okay, let's figure out how we can do that in a remote environment. So thinking positively about how you can tackle the challenges that you're facing, rather than just throwing up your hands and saying, this is the way it is and there's nothing I can do about it. So I really think that's important, to have the right mindset as you approach working a remote environment. So next, when it comes to actually the day-to-day work, what does it look like? What are some of the tips and the things that we've learned over the years? When I started 5Q, this is a picture of myself and my daughter, probably 15 years ago. And what you see when we started 5Q, we lived in a three-bedroom, 1 bath, no shower, 1,200 square foot bungalow style home in Lincoln, Nebraska. And so my first day, I left work, working in an office environment on July 31st, and then there was a weekend, and I started on August 2nd. And so I started 5Q on August 2nd. And that computer cabinet that you see right there with the computer right beside it, that was my office for the first day. It was right in the middle of the living room, right in the middle of the dining room. The living room was in between. I quickly realized that was the worst place for me to be able to have my office, because there were people coming in and out. We had 5 kids at the time. That just was not going to work. So we ended up clearing out a little hole in the basement. I mean, it literally was a hole. We quickly painted it one night, threw down some carpet, got everything out. And so this was literally a 10 by 10 room in the basement. And the best part about so this was the first office that I had in a remote environment. The best part about this is you'll see my kids' art on the back side, the back wall. Those sticky notes are all little notes that they had written. And but the point is, I had to get in a place where I had a room, I could shut the door, and I could be able to be focused on the time that I needed to, even if it wasn't the best. I mean, it wasn't pretty, but it was what we needed to do to get stuff done at that time. So the first item in terms of just being effective working remotely is choosing the right space. And I really do encourage you to have a door that you can shut. I know some of you, that may not be a reality, but if it is at all, just being able to shut that door, being able to get some focus time. And I know with our kids were welcome to come into my office anytime they wanted to. However, they knew they had to knock quietly or kind of look inside to see if, hey, is dad on the phone? Is he on a Zoom call? Back then Zoom didn't exist, but is he on a call? So they knew they couldn't just come bounding in, but they were welcome to come in anytime. They just had to knock and see if I was available at the time. Encourage you to have windows in your room. That natural space is really important. You can see the the setup that I picture right there, that is actually my office right now. And you can see it's a standing desk. And so as you're thinking ergonomically, if you have the ability to do a standing desk, that's great. If not, that's fine too. The two things when it comes to ergonomics that I try to work on, one is making sure that my eyes are level with the top of this computer screen. Um, that's what my chiropractor has told me many times, and I'm paying the price for not doing that in past years. And then also making sure that your arms, your elbows are at a 90-degree angle when you're in that typing position. So do what you can to, you can see I've got elevated risers. On my standing desk, I'm tall, I'm 6'4", so I've got to have some extra stilts on my monitors and computer to make it work well. But make sure you're thinking ergonomically, because if you don't, you're going to pay the price later on. And then make it your own. You know, you saw the previous slide where I had my kids' art around. Make it your own. Do encourage you to use 2 monitors. And lastly, don't use your bedroom. You're going to be um, having a separate space where you say, hey, I'm at work and now I can shut the door when I'm leaving work, helps give you that ability to draw that separation. I know one of you had asked questions earlier, how do you draw that separation between work and home life and still get stuff done? Having the door in the office for me is what makes all the difference, because then when I shut the door, I'm walking down to be able to be with the family, and mentally I'm shifting places there. So you've chosen the right spot. Next is to choose the right tools. And I think this is a question that some of you had asked as well. And the categories I encourage you to think about would be, what are you using to, from a chat standpoint, being able to communicate in real time with your coworkers back and forth. Secondly is being able to do a live video with your coworkers. Thirdly, with project management, being able to manage the tasks in the team environment. And then fourthly is document management. And those are some of the tools that are out there. I'll share you what our stack is, what we use. We use Slack. We use Slack for our day-to-day. I mean, for us, really everything gets done in Slack. And we have chat rooms that help create the culture. Like we have a water cooler chat room where anybody can post anything in there. We've got a t-shirt list. So when somebody says something funny, it goes on the t-shirt list. And yes, we actually have made actual t-shirts based on the quotes that come from the t-shirt list. We have a prayer chat room, especially during times like this. There's folks that are, they have prayer needs. And so, and there's others that I'm not even aware of. I think there's a cat chat room and a dog chat room, let alone we have a chat room for each one of our clients and our customers, so that the team that's working on them, they can interact with around that. We have a company-wide Slack chat room. So it may sound like there's a lot going on, but the way that Slack has it organized, we've used other tools over the years, makes it really seamless, and has been a great tool for us. From a video conferencing, we're big on Zoom. We've switched to them within the first 6 months that they were out, both from a cost perspective as well as from a just effectiveness, that it just works. Zoom also has the ability to have breakout rooms, so you can actually break out into separate groups if you have too many on a Zoom call. So I encourage you to check them out. For project management, we use Teamwork projects. We've used others over the years. We've used Trello, we've used Asana, Basecamp. Right now, we find that Teamwork gives us the best of the communication, as well as the task management, as well as interacting with our clients when we need to. You're probably familiar, I'll just mention Notion. That's been a great one for us from a documentation standpoint. It keeps our documentation for our processes in a centralized place. Also has a lot of other features. And then we use Harvest for tracking time. So some other tips on working productive remotely. Start your day like you normally do. Shower, get dressed, just go through your normal routine. Next is avoid time wasters. And I find when I walk in the office, if I'm not careful, you check your email, check your Facebook, check your Twitter. Before long, you've wasted 30 minutes and you haven't got a thing done. And what works best for me, this may not be for everybody, but as I'm walking out before I leave the night before, if I make a list of the things that I want to be getting done the next day, and I do it on pen and paper. Um, I use a planner, make that list the night before. Then when I come in, I'm able to hit the ground running and get going right immediately. Change your scenery throughout the day. Be willing to move around. Nobody likes to be stuck in front of their computer the entire time, so take the breaks. And then when you're done at the end of the day, if you're able to shut the door, and that way creates that separation between your work and your home space. So the question that a lot of people are having is, what about the staff members have? And in particular, has had an impact on her, not remotely. She used to work remotely, but her child, I think he is preschool. That now, instead of going to preschool, her child is home with two parents who both of them work full time. It's like, what do I do now? And it's a real challenge. And as one of you mentioned earlier, what do you do when you're trying to be productive, but you're also trying to teach and train your kid, and maybe concept of homeschooling. So some of these initial tips come from her. So just start every day with breakfast and get dressed, and then set up a creative play area. I know in our house we have that. We've got Legos where the kids can go and play, and just play by themselves or play with their other siblings. Now, the other thing that our staff member does, she set an iPad up with preset bookmarks. And the bookmarks the sites that she's found really helpful these are some of the sites that she's found. And she especially mentioned the Khan Academy, because it leads the kids through in a very systematized way how to be learning about new topics and new things. And then, of course, PBS Kids. The Kids Corner with Reframe Ministry has been a great resource for her as well as some of the others you can see there. And at the end, I'll be glad to share the slide deck, and you'll also have access to this actual webinar after as well. But if you do want the slide deck, just shoot me an email or drop us a note here, and we'll send the slide deck out to you. The other things that our staff member and we've done over time is, one, when my wife did this actually really well, when our kids were just getting to the point where it was on edge. Usually this happened around right before dinner time. They're whining, they're asking for things. Give yourself the freedom just to take a break, just to log off of your work, take 10 or 15 minutes, sit down. With my wife, she would sit down and she would read a book to them, just read them aloud. And that kind of filled up their love bucket enough where she could go back, in her case, go back to getting ready for whatever on her task list is for that day, or if you're working remotely, get back to the work and the tasks that need to be done. Another thing that Emily, our staff member, does is with she and her husband, they are tag teaming with their son, and they set up recess time with the neighbor, and they felt comfortable doing that. Since I think in her area the limit was 10 people, 10 people or more with the coronavirus. But so they have a regular time where either Emily or her husband will take their son out to spend time with the neighbor. Another tip that I've found super helpful for our family is using some kind of an internet filter. And it's not just filtering out the bad stuff, but it also gives you controls to be able to either limit the time or manage the time that they're spending on the internet. And we use the Disney Circle. We found it to be super user-friendly. I've tested a lot of them over the years, and it's been the most user-friendly. one that we've had that we're able to use for all of our kids in different ways. I mentioned earlier, knock on the door, have the kids are taught to knock on the door if they're coming in to my office, and they can come in at any time. And then don't be afraid I know we would, if but we would hire a babysitter from time to time, not for the entire day, but if there was a focused time where I had to be focused and my wife was going to be out, then we would hire a babysitter for 2 to 3 hours at a time. And you can ask your employer if that's something that they would help cover. They may or may not, but I think that's something definitely worth considering and worth doing as needed. Again, some of you are asking questions. I'm gonna be available after the presentation to be able to answer any of the questions that we have, and I'll stick around for as long as needed. But I'm going to go through the material, and then we'll circle back with questions a little bit later. So we've talked about working remotely. Now, what if you're in the position of leading and managing a remote team? What then? I got a kick out of this Dilbert cartoon from a couple years ago. He says, I can't let you telecommute because then I wouldn't be able to manage you. Well, you're managing me right now, and all it's doing is preventing me from getting my work done. And of course, the pointy-headed boss couldn't quite understand what he's saying there. But all of us have preconceived notions about working or managing remotely, and some of those are good, some of those are bad. I know what I'm going to share on this slide and the next one is probably the two most important things when it comes to leading and managing a team remotely, and it's developing a consistent rhythm. And that's something I've gained from the book Rockefeller Habits or Scaling Up, and now it's also big in the book Traction. But just having a consistent rhythm. It starts out with an annual rhythm and a quarterly rhythm, and then specifically what we're going to talk about today is the weekly and a daily rhythm, and that's what brings that daily accountability. And this is just an example. I took this picture this morning when we're talking about a daily rhythm. This is our team, the team that was available today, and you can tell everybody is in their own working environment and working on Zoom. So the first, and for those that are leading or managing, this is the number one thing I'd encourage you to do is if you haven't been doing them, implement a daily huddle or a daily stand-up. And a couple of thoughts about that. First of all, it shouldn't last longer than 15 minutes. If it's lasting longer than 15 minutes, you're doing something wrong. And we've structured ours to be a tiered communication. And so what that looks like in our company right now, I meet with my my office manager at 8:30 Central Time every morning, and we go over what's on. We'll go over the agenda in just a little bit, and then I meet with our executive team, and then we have two separate stand-ups that are going on at the same time: our digital services team, and then our sales and marketing team. And so you can see if there's something that we need to communicate in an important way that more than just a text or a Slack, we can flow through the entire organization in a very short order. And those stand-ups are really, we're asking three questions. Is basically what's up in the next 24 hours. So what's on your plate today? And when you answer that question, it's not just, well, I'm making sales calls or I have client calls. You want to be specific. You want to use things like, well, I have a call with thus and thus, and this is the main topic. Because what that allows is the other people on the call to understand what's going on, and allows them to bring up issues about, oh, well, have you thought about this, or consider. I'm glad to hear you're doing that. I'm supposed to talk with them in 2 or 3 days. Hey, why don't you just mention this? And then we don't have to have another meeting. So being specific about what's on your plate for the next 24 hours, and then where am I stuck? And so that's when we go around, everybody on the call answers what's on their plate and where am I stuck, if anything. And then we look at the daily metrics, and we've done that at times and we haven't done that at times. And we're actually just in the process of adding that back. Every area has different metrics that they're responsible for. And we don't spend a lot of time on them, but at the same time, if there's an issue, we can address that issue and schedule a time to meet and talk about that issue earlier, rather than letting it go until if if rather than letting it go and find out a week or 2 weeks later that you're having that the metrics that you're measuring are on a sync and you haven't been able to address it soon enough. On a weekly basis, we have two weeklies. This first weekly is one-on-ones with our staff, and they're no more than 30 minutes. And they could be weekly with some staff on. I may also do them bi-weekly. And for our organization, what you're looking at there on the right is we call that our people plan, and we update that every quarter for everybody in the company. And so that's what we use to say, are we on track with answering the question, what is a successful day? What is a successful week? What does a successful quarter look like for each person in the company? So when we're in our 30-minute one-on-one, we cover what are the wins and challenges that you've had in the last week. How are you progressing on the goals and on the key result areas that you're working on? And then I'll often ask the question, well, how can I best serve you? And sometimes the best way I can serve is by getting out of their way. Others, it's by helping think through things. Others, it's by connecting them with different people. Other times, it's by just helping them when they're stuck. And so I found that to be a fairly effective way. Again, these are things that I would hope that you might be doing, you should be doing at a certain level, even whether you're remote working or not. It's good management, good leadership practices to be connecting with your team intentionally on a regular basis. The other thing that we do weekly is, so we have a daily rhythm as a company-wide, and then we have a weekly rhythm. Every week we get together. Usually it's about a 1-hour meeting on Fridays, and every week we cover two things for sure. We cover our learning time, and we might be working through a book. Sometimes we use videos. We use TED Talks. Sometimes we'll do a lead through something. There's a service out there called Right Now Media that offers lots of motivational type learnings. Right now we're working through the book called The Phoenix Project, which is about just something that all of our team has been able to learn from and gain from. And then we do what we call the core value shout outs. And those shout outs are around what our core values are. And it gives everybody in the company an opportunity to congratulate or to give accolades where they've seen people doing their work well and in alignment with our core values. And then that weekly meeting gives us a platform. If we need to give organization updates, I try to give a finance update once a month. If there's client or customer updates, everybody can hear that. And then sometimes, like last 2 quarters ago, we called it documentation time. We were documenting our processes. So the last 15 or 20 minutes, everybody had a list of their processes that they were documenting, and so that they were able to document. So there might be some project time that we would do, and those flex as needed. But that daily rhythm of doing that daily huddle, daily stand up, along with a weekly rhythm of bringing everybody together, of affirming the positive things that you want to encourage in your organization, and talking about the things where where things haven't been going as well. That allows you to it does allow you to create a culture. Culture comes from the word eat, and what are the things that you're cultivating to be able to make your culture thrive? And it also what you praise and what you punish is how your culture is going to be grown and responded to. And you can do that in a remote working environment. Some of the tips for running online meetings. First is to choose the right tool. Just knowing, hey, is this a video call? Can I do it via Slack? The slide earlier showed what our tech stack is. Usually for us, if it's more than 3 people, we're going to be on a Zoom call where everybody can see each other. Make sure you're setting the agenda. We require, if we're doing a video call, we do require everybody to turn on the video. You're able to see facial expressions and all those different things. You expect the person who's facilitating, you have to be more proactive than what you are in a co-located environment. Because if you ask, okay, we're going to go around the table and give your feedback, well, nobody can see who comes next. So that facilitator has to intentionally call out names, draw people in. You do have to be more proactive, I found, in leading an online team as opposed to just in person in the conference room. We allowed a chat service to go on during the meeting. That is really helpful, especially when we're in client calls, because that gives us the ability to actually have conversations, kind of questions behind the question, and so that we're all on the same page, and then we can address questions as needed on the fly. And this last one is really important, to allow space for life. And what I mean by that is that, in a office environment, like I said, you can come in, you can touch base with people, look them in the eye, shake their hand, see how they're doing, ask about their family. It's harder. You have to be a lot more intentional to do that in a remote environment. So allow sometimes I'll say, hey, we're going to start our meeting at let's say 10:55. That 10:55 in an optional starting to whoever wants to come, and we can just chat, and then we'll actually start the meeting right at 11. But however you manage it, you need to allow space just for people to talk and share, because you don't always know what's going on the other side of that screen. Some other tips: bring a human touch. You still use written and mailed notes. Reach out to individuals just with no agenda. Just say, hey, I'm just thinking about you. I don't have an agenda. 5 or 10 minutes just to touch base. Praise early, often, and publicly, and that doesn't come naturally to me. I've had to learn that, whether it be with my kids or whether it be on a team. But it really does make a difference. Pick up the phone and call once in a while. I'll do that when I'm traveling. If I'm on the road, heading to the airport or whatever, just picking up the phone and touching base with somebody by phone is really helpful. Using flip charts in a whiteboard with a second camera, that can be helpful when you're leading a team. I've done that. Sometimes I just get tired of typing in the notes of the computer screen, and so I'll actually have a second camera right on the flip chart. And lastly, it is really important that you lead by example, and that if you're asking the team to share what they're going to be doing for the day, that you lead by example. You share what you're going to be doing for that day as well, and just even though it's remotely, the old adage, more is caught than taught, is very true. Some of the resources that I found helpful over the years, here's some books. One is the book called Remote. That's by Jason Fried. Really helpful. He started his company about the same time that we started ours. He's the owner of Basecamp, and just some good short chapters, good helpful tips. Also, the future of the work, and then the 4-hour work week is. I tell folks, it's got a lot of great life hacks, a lot of good principles in it. But some of the things you do have to take with a grain of salt. But I found that it does have some really good helpful tips. Some blog posts. Slack actually put together just recently the ultimate guide to remote meetings. Through that, I found that helpful. Also, we've done some blog posts. We actually wrote these 5 or more years ago, and we've resurrected them here recently. How to combat cabin fever and maximizing face-to-face time, some of those things. If this ends up being a long-term deal with the whole coronavirus, one of our other rhythms is we do bring everybody together in person. We try to do it twice a year if we're able to. So that maximizing those the face-to-face when you're remote is still critical. I'm just going to mention just some talent resources. I'm going to mention especially home coders. If you're in a position where you need to hire some additional people who are used to working remotely, home coders has been a great resource for us. Hiring great staff. Probably a good portion of our staff came to us through home coders. As I mentioned, our executive team got together when the whole coronavirus came together, and we asked, well, what can we do to give back? And this webinar was one of the things that came out about. The other thing is we saw folks using one of our products, our personalization platform, to message their constituents, their audience about what's coming up next, whether uh, when they come to the website. And that's Journey product. And we're like, man, is there a way? So we've actually chosen to give free Journey accounts until May 31st, that they'll be able to use it for free. And again, it's a simple messaging tool. Like in the cases we were looking at earlier, they're using it as a messaging pop-up system, but it's a whole lot more than that. There is you're actually able to personalize the experience of people when they come to your website. And so just encourage you to check that out. So I've seen some of the questions coming through. Josh, how do you want to handle the questions? Do you want to ask them like verbally and have me answer them? Is that how you want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been trying to kind of group like questions so we can answer multiple at the same time, and then also organize the questions that are different so we can make sure we cover everything.
Sounds
So
great.
yeah, I'll actually start out with the first one. We had several people ask, kind of variations of this. What happens if I'm, unable to close the door,
Mm,
or what happens if I'm a single parent and my child's not old enough to, really work on their own or be on their own at
mhm,
this point. Do you have any suggestions as, kind of the secondary, especially uh, I know there was lots of concern over hiring a babysitter during the coronavirus with
mhm.
social distancing. Is there any suggestions you have that's kind of maybe uh, a secondary option than closing the door?
Man, that's a tough one. I can remember myself actually working with my first son on my lap, typing the computer, with him sitting with me right on the lap, and you know, Grant, I don't know that I have an easy answer for you for that, because yeah, that works great for a while, but what is it when they are, if they're really young, when it's time to change the diaper, when it's time to feed them, and at the end of the day, parenting is a full-time job, and going to work is a full-time job, and I would just encourage you to have those frank conversations with your employer and just say, hey, this is a situation. Um, I, I'm not in a position where I can do both well, and just see if there's things that they may have suggestions to help you work through it as well. But I definitely feel the pain on that, and that it's not I don't have an easy answer to that. I know in our setting, in our scenario, if my wife was stepping out of the house for a while, I was able to step away, but it was just for a short periods of time, and it wasn't for a long period of time like that. And as soon as you're able to, if it's a babysitter or a relative that can come and swing by, I know that's a value too. And I'd encourage you, those who are here and you face that as well, if you have some good thoughts, drop them in the chat room, and let's hear what others have done as well. I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's a tough situation. It really is.
Yeah, it's definitely really tough, and I know that there's probably not a perfect answer there, but I know for me, uh, being able to have a schedule. If the kids are young, I see actually Anita is mentioning this as well. Trying to organize your schedule around when they take naps and that type of thing. Obviously, kids are unpredictable, so they don't always take naps when they're supposed to. But having a set schedule helps them get into that rhythm as well. I've also enjoyed the opportunity to have flexible hours, so being able to work before they wake up in the morning or something like that. But definitely, that's a real challenge, and requires flexibility on the part of your employer because yeah, it's it's hard to do it all. Next question we have is when you were talking about all of the different meetings, the stand-ups, the weekly one-on-ones, that type of thing, do you have a guideline as to how much time should be spent in meetings?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the nature of the meeting. Like I mentioned, so one principle that I've actually found to be helpful is that I would rather have more people in one meeting than multiple people, or than fewer people in lots of different meetings. And so I try to ask the question, who are all the right people that need to be in the meeting to be able to make the decisions or move forward? So every role in our company has a different expectation when it comes to meeting time. And at the base, what I gave you is the baseline. Everybody's expected to spend 15 minutes a day in that stand up, and everybody's expected to have a half an hour one-on-one with their supervisor, either weekly or biweekly. And then everybody's expected to be at the company-wide meeting 1 hour every day. So that's like the bare minimum. But that's really, if you're not having those regular connection points with folks, you're going to, people are going to be making assumptions and wrong assumptions and get off track very, very quickly. And so that's kind of what we've said is the minimum. And then if there's other meetings that need to happen around serving customers, serving clients, other things are getting stuff done, those are as well. I will say, like, the team that is primarily like our, our designers or programmers, their expectation is typically to 30 to 32 hours of billable work per week. So that leaves basically 1 day of administration, meeting, or other time throughout the week. So that's what our typical expectation is for those that are our producers.
Thanks, Chad. And yeah, just kind of the quick math on that, the stand up and the hourly learning, and then the half hour one-on-one puts it at about 2.5 hours a week. And I know since we've implemented that, I found that overall meeting time has actually gone down. It sounds like a lot, but when you're able to get everybody in one room and ask about what are your blockers, what are you stuck on, and what do you have working today, you'll actually find that people can collaborate and become a whole lot more efficient that way, rather than having a lot of one-off meetings that just happen during the day.
Yeah,
So
that's good, Josh.
the other question is, what are some practices that might be general kind of leadership management practices that you've actually found do not work at all when it comes to online work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the things that don't work, I tend to kind of block out of my mind. So I'm going to have to think back to the things that we've tried. I'll just share some of the things that we've tried. Some have worked well, and but we may not do on a regular basis. We've done things like we'll have a movie night where everybody will actually pull up the same movie, and we'll all watch together, even though we're all distributed, and then talk about it afterwards. Or sometimes we're trying this right now. I'm not sure at what level of success yet, but we'll have a lunchtime. So this will be like, hey, whoever wants to hop on a Zoom call, we're gonna have lunch from 11:30 to 12:30 Central Time or whatever time it is, and whoever's available can hop in. And sometimes that works. Sometimes it's a little awkward just watching other people eat, but at the same time, it's just you're trying to replicate what's it like when you're in an office environment and you're sitting down. You have your people. I know when I worked in an office environment, there is a group that we always went to lunch every day, and there's real connections that were made that way. So we've tried that with nominal success on the culture side. If I were to say the hardest thing to work on in a remote environment is probably speed of pace and decisions at a leadership level, especially when those things can, in an office environment, those things can happen almost organically in those hallway conversations. Those are really hard to replicate in a remote environment. I've found that that's probably the hardest thing, that organic that those organic ideas, I can have a lot of ideas, but then it's like, man, it takes a lot of energy to take that next step to actually share them with people and the right people. And it may be a bad idea. So then it feel like I'm wasting time, as opposed to when you're in an office environment, it can happen a lot more organically and a lot more quickly. So that's, for myself, that's been the biggest drawback of leading a remote team. Hope that helps, Doug. That was a great question, by the way.
Thanks, Chad. I am not seeing any more questions. If there are any that I missed, go ahead and drop them in. I think I got them all, but I apologize if I did miss any.
Great. I love to see what's happening in the chat room. Kate just said there's a fun app called Rave that you can use and watch movies together, and just the other tips that folks are dropping in there. I think that's awesome. And if there's other things that we can do that to help out in any way, or I don't know, Josh, maybe we should put a Facebook group up where folks who attended the webinar can continue to share tips if they want to around that.
That is a great idea, Chad. We actually have a Facebook group that we'll be sending a link to everybody if you want to jump in. And our goal is really to bring people together like you for collaborative learning, so that we can all learn from each other and shared experiences.
And I did, Dan.
So,
I just saw a question by Dan about help for the kids at home. Yeah, we did cover that, and I know, Dan, you've only got a couple kids to worry about, I know, and I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but we'll be sending out the entire webinar and slide deck to you, so you can work on that. You can see what we've done in the past.
and also I got a question from Jessica. She asked, because it's a short term, or it's intended to be a short term situation, they don't really have the ability to set up an office or computer desk or anything like that. How do you have any suggestions on how you can make the best use of temporary space, since it's intended to be a temporary experience?
Yeah, I'm wondering, Jessica, if you have kids in the house, I would answer it one way than if I didn't have kids in the house. If you don't have kids in the house, both of you working at the living room table can work out well. Some of our staff members, especially the more creatives, they'll go to the coffee shop and work from a coffee shop from time to time. And then just what I'd encourage you to do is identify the places where you feel like you can get your best and your most work done, whether that's the kitchen table, whether that's in the living room, whether it's at a coffee shop. I know, well, I guess coffee shops are closed right now, so that may not work great in the area right now. But I try different places around your house, around your living quarters. Maybe you live in an area where you have an open area outside. I don't work great outside, but some of our staff members prefer that. Try a lot of different areas and identify the one where you find you're able to get the most creative and focused work done, and then visit that one often. I hope that helps.
And I've actually found, I see, Jessica, you said that you do have kids at home, but they're old enough to take care of themselves. I've found sometimes when we're traveling, because we do work remotely, I do get to travel, but I'll end up in a place that doesn't have a great office space. And what I'll try to do is I'll try to actually move around, because it won't be necessarily comfortable for a long time, but if you're in different places throughout the day. So I've used dressers as standing desks that were a decent height. Spent some time sitting at dining room tables, but try to move around if you have a space that's less than ideal, and that helps you stay as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, that's great, Josh.
All right. I am not seeing any other questions come through. If you have, oop, one second, another question came in. All right. Ashley Michelle said her situation, she was hired and onboarded a total of 4 days before their workplace leaders told them to work from home.
Ooh.
She was hoping to, get through her probationary period and getting to know everyone before working from home, but she doesn't have any time to set up. She hasn't had any time to set up an office, so she's setting up a laptop on a breakfast tray. She says her company's been supportive, but her direct supervisor is down with the virus. So she feels like she spends a lot of time not doing anything, including engaging with her kids and feeling guilty. Do you have any advice on uh, that kind of balance? One, I would say maybe uh, getting to know your coworkers if you're brand new, and then also how do you deal with guilt when you don't feel like you're spending time with your kids, and then the time you are spending away from them, you don't feel is necessarily productive. Hopefully, I represented that well, Ashley Michelle.
Wow, that's there's a lot there. That's a tough situation when you're. I thought when was hired at one place I started, my first day on the job was jumping on an airplane and flying to California for a conference, not knowing anything about what I was going to represent. I thought that was tough, but I think you've got it tougher. And in a typical situation like that, you would lean on your supervisor a lot about asking questions like, who should I be connecting with? And then being proactive to connect with those. But with your supervisor being out, that makes it really tougher. And what I'd encourage you to do is one is you can't over communicate. Even if your supervisor is out, ask him or her, ask her, who should I be communicating with? And instead of that, um, if they don't have specific work for you right now, just let them know. Say, hey, I'm wait. If there's something else I'm supposed to be doing, or just actively invite for that work. I know with this whole situation, I would expect that they're going to be understanding, that they're going to understand the situation with yourself and with everybody else. So I would just encourage you to communicate and over communicate, and give yourself the freedom. Don't if they don't have anything for you to do, then that's okay. And then go give yourself don't give yourself the freedom to spend that time with your kids, but also let them know you're going to be checking in at specific times, or have your phone available, checking in throughout the day if needed, so that if there is something, you're able to jump right on it. Um, so yeah, I think it sounds to me like these are just some waters you'll have to wade through. It's a tricky situation that the timing of it is kind of crazy for you and for a lot of folks right now. So, um, but I think if you just keep communication open, they'll be understanding.
Also, Gretchen in the chat said that she had an experience where she was hired and didn't meet any of her coworkers in real life, I believe, for a few months. And so she actually scheduled lunchtime or coffee time when she could just meet up on a conference call, video call, that type of thing, and get to know her coworkers a little bit better. So that might be an option for you. I'm not sure, but that would be a good way to try, and good way to see what is going on in the company. When you understand that your supervisor's out and you may not be getting answers quickly. you may be able to, through these through meeting your coworkers, you may be able to find out some information about what's going on and who you should ask more quickly.
Yeah, that's great advice. Be proactive.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, we really appreciate you all showing up. And as we mentioned, we will be sending out a link to a Facebook group where you can jump in and ask any more questions. Everybody that has asked for slides in the chat, we'll make sure that we get the slides out to you as well. And we will be sending a recording of this a little bit later this week. So you'll be able to watch that, and we can include the slides with that as well. Thank you all so much, and hope you have a great day.